Good Tuesday morning inspiration for today, family. I hope you're enjoying this time we're spending getting to know the 12 apostles. I know that I am, and I'm going to be better, I think, for the rest of my life having thought about these guys. I look forward to meeting them. I hope you do also. Today, we come to the apostle Philip, one of the first ones to be called by Jesus, and one that Philip was not mentioned a whole lot in the New Testament, but when he was, it's significant. And I think you'll agree with that when this 10 minutes is over. But the first time that we find Philip is when Jesus called him as an apostle. And I think as a disciple, actually, initially, because apostles, remember, are those who were sent out. And so for disciple means learner. So the 12 disciples were learners, followers. They were kind of being mentored by Jesus for 3 years. And then they were sent out, and all 12 were used significantly, including Philip, who we'll mention at the end of this 10 minutes. But in John chapter 1, at verse 40, let's see, the next day, that would be at verse 43. At verse 43, John 1:43 is the first mention of Philip. And he had just called Peter and Andrew. But 43, the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Come, follow me." Something that Jesus, when he called you and I, basically, when he was revealed to us, he's saying to you right now, if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, he says, "Come, follow me." Reading on, it says, Philip was from Bethsaida, Andrew and Peter's hometown. Immediately, verse 45, Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, "We have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about, and his name is Jesus." Philip knew his Bible, didn't he? Which was the Old Testament at that time. And he knew that the Old Testament is basically about the coming Messiah. And his name, it says, is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. Wow. One of the very first things he does is go and call, and we talked about this a little bit last week when we talked about Nathanael. But Philip wanted to share the good news of Jesus. I want to keep that in my life, my whole life. I want to be excited about him and ready to declare Jesus to whomever will listen. Well, that's what Philip did, and it's specifically what he hurried to do. The next time we hear about Philip is at one of the most famous miracles that Jesus ever did. And that was the feeding of the 5,000. Because Jesus was out speaking, and there was this huge crowd gathered, and they said later it was about 5,000. And this is in John chapter 6 at verse 5. Jesus saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. He turns to Philip, and he asks, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" I have the feeling, and you'll see in the next thing that we're going to talk about, Philip evidently had a good command of numbers. He asked him, "Where can we get money for all these people?" But verse 6, we're enabled to see why Jesus asked him. Jesus was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. But, verse 7, Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then it says, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. There's a young boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's how Jesus was going to feed them. He was going to multiply that. But Philip didn't know that. I thought it was so cool. It's so interesting to me that in the midst of these 5,000 people, Jesus cares about Philip. And he takes time. Jesus knew what he was going to do, but he says, verse 6, he was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Don't you feel that way, that sometimes things don't happen exactly like we would choose for them to do? Sometimes Jesus is trying to teach us a lesson. Sometimes he's trying to build into our lives. Sometimes it can just be testing us so that we will know ourselves. Oh, I didn't have faith in that situation. Oh, why didn't I? Next time I've got to have faith. I just feel that sometimes that's how Jesus is. He cares about us enough to build into our lives. And he did that right then to Philip. Now, did it work? Did Philip continue to grow? Yes. Yes, he did. And the next time we hear from Philip is in the situation that actually we talked about yesterday with Thomas. But that's in John chapter 14. And we saw how Thomas was used to ask just the right question so that Jesus would declare that he is the way, the truth, and the life. Right after that, in the next paragraph, actually after Jesus makes that whole statement, who pipes up? Philip. I feel like Jesus had been building into his life, if for no other reason, just so Philip would ask the correct question at the correct time. And he does. And by the way, just the fact that Philip, out of the 12, hearing Jesus speak, Philip would pipe up and have the nerve and confidence to speak. I think that says something about him and his personality and what Jesus had built into him already. But in John chapter 14, at verse 8, Philip says, Lord, will show us the Father and we will be satisfied. I don't know how Jesus felt when he heard that. But I do like his response. And the reason I say that is because here's part of his response. Jesus replied, verse 9, have I been with you all this time, Philip? And yet you still don't know who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking me to show him to you? And that should be our verse for the day. If you want to memorize any verse, then here it is for today. And that's at verse 9, 14:9. Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. When you see Jesus and the Father are one. It's the mystery of the Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are one in nature, one in thought, but showing themselves as 3 separate persons. It's hard for our minds to comprehend, but anyone, and it was Philip's question. Philip asked, and then Jesus answered, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. I feel that Philip asked the question right for us, and we need to know it. God and Jesus are one. Well, God bless. Philip went on, by the way, to be an evangelist and died in spreading the gospel in Turkey, in what is today Turkey. Hey, God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow for another exciting story.
And I won't worry about tomorrow. I'm trusting what you say.